"Can you teach me to dance?" begged the little girl in the wheelchair the lonely CEO. The ballroom was silent. Music drifted softly from the speakers, echoing in the vast empty hall, where polished chandeliers reflected against marble floors. A man stood alone in the center, tall, immaculately dressed, but hollow in his eyes, like someone who owned everything yet had nothing. His name was Ethan Cole, a CEO known for building empires and breaking competitors. But if you looked closer, you'd see a man whose victories came with loneliness as their price. Ethan had everything money could buy: mansions, cars, respect, even fear from rivals. But in the quiet moments, when there were no cameras, no boardrooms, no applause, he was just a man whose heart carried an emptiness no wealth could fill. One evening, after an exhausting week of meetings, Ethan returned to his penthouse only to find himself restless. For reasons he couldn't explain, he wandered into a nearby community center where a charity event was quietly taking place. Children and families filled the hall, some dancing, some eating, some simply laughing together. Ethan, always the outsider, stood at the edge, unnoticed, until a small voice broke the rhythm of his solitude. "Excuse me, sir." He turned. A little girl in a wheelchair looked up at him. She had wide, bright eyes, full of hope, though her body seemed frail. She smiled nervously, holding a toy ballerina in her lap. Can you teach me to dance?" she asked, her voice trembling with both innocence and desperation. Ethan froze. Him, dance? No one had ever asked him something so human. For a moment, he wanted to refuse. He wasn't good with children. He wasn't good with people, period. But the way she looked at him, like he wasn't a CEO, like he wasn't untouchable, but simply a man, melted something in him. "What's your name?" Ethan asked softly. "Lila," she said. "I've always wanted to dance, but the kids at school say I can't. They laugh at me." Her voice cracked, but she straightened her shoulders bravely. "But if someone could just show me, maybe I could learn my own way." Ethan felt a lump in his throat. Here was a child who could barely move her legs, yet had more courage than most adults he'd ever met. Without overthinking, he knelt beside her wheelchair and extended his hand. "All right, Lila," he whispered. "Let's try." The next few days turned into weeks. Ethan found himself returning to the community center every evening, leaving behind his boardrooms and meetings just to see the little girl who believed she could dance. At first, it was awkward. Ethan had no clue how to teach. He wasn't a dance instructor, but he realized Lila didn't need technical lessons. She needed belief. Together, they created a rhythm of their own. Ethan would push her wheelchair in gentle circles, guiding her arms to flow with the music. He showed her how to move her hands gracefully, how to spin with laughter, how to feel the music rather than simply follow it. And every time she giggled, every time she clapped her hands in delight, Ethan felt something strange filling the emptiness in his chest, something he hadn't felt in years. Joy. Still, it wasn't easy. Lila faced days of frustration. Sometimes her arms grew tired. Sometimes she cried, hating her wheelchair, hating the stares of others. One evening, she shouted at Ethan, "Maybe they're right. Maybe I'll never dance like them." Ethan knelt before her, his voice stern yet tender. "Lila, listen to me. Dancing isn't about walking or spinning like others. It's about telling the world your heart's story through movement. And your story is more powerful than you realize." Tears filled her eyes. Slowly, she nodded. From then on, Lila danced not to be like others, but to be herself. The bond between Ethan and Lila deepened. She became the daughter he never had, the family he never knew he needed. And in turn, she began healing wounds inside him he never admitted existed. Word began to spread about the CEO, who spent evenings teaching a girl in a wheelchair to dance. At first, Ethan didn't care, but soon, more children with disabilities came forward, asking to join. What started with one little girl became a small community. Ethan funding lessons, organizing inclusive dance classes, and building something far more meaningful than another company. Then came the day of the charity gala. Families, reporters, and local officials filled the grand hall. The highlight of the evening was a performance, Lila's performance. Ethan stood nervously at the edge of the stage, watching as Lila, in a beautiful flowing dress, rolled onto the stage in her wheelchair. Music swelled, the lights dimmed, and as the world watched, she danced, arms moving gracefully, spinning her chair with elegance and courage, her face glowing with pure joy. By the time the performance ended, the audience erupted into thunderous applause. Many moved to tears. Lila had proven that dance wasn't defined by steps or legs, it was defined by heart. Ethan stepped onto the stage, his eyes misty, and whispered to her, "You didn't just dance tonight, Lila. You taught the whole world to see beauty differently." Smiled up at him. "No, Mr. Ethan, you taught me to believe." That night, something shifted. Ethan realized that his legacy wouldn't be the skyscrapers he built or the fortune he made, it would be the lives he touched, the hope he restored, and the love he gave. The lonely CEO had finally found his missing piece in the laughter of a little girl who once begged him to teach her to dance, and together they taught the world that true strength doesn't come from what we can do, it comes from refusing to give up on what we dream. Message to viewers: no dream is too small, no heart too broken, no life too limited to create beauty. Sometimes all it takes is courage to ask and kindness to answer.